एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज के वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे जॉफ्री चौसर की प्रोलॉग टू द कैंटरबरी टेल्स के बारे में ही। जैसे कि पिछली वीडियोस में हम लाइन 207 तक डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, आज के वीडियो में हम लाइन 208 से 269 तक डिस्कस करेंगे। अगर आपको उससे पहले की कोई भी लाइन्स या किसी चीज़ में डाउट है तो आप कमेंट सेक्शंस में हमसे पूछ सकते हैं। Lines 208 to 232. The friar, another cleric, is even less a man of God than a monk, a member of a mendicant order of men who lived on what they would get by begging. He has become a professional fundraiser, the best in his friary because of some special skills, personal charm, a good singing voice, and an attractive little lisp, a talent for mending quarrels, and having the right little gift for the ladies, and a forgiving way in the confessional, especially when he expects a generous donation. He can find good economic reasons to cultivate the company of the rich rather than the poor. A friar there was, a wanton and merry, a limiter, a full Solomon man. In all others, for is none that can. So much of dalliance and fair language. Dalliance and fair language means gossip and flattery. He had made full many a marriage of young women at his own cost. Unto his order he was a noble boast. Full well beloved and familiar was he with franklins over all in his country, and eke with worthy women of the town, for he had powerful of confession, as said himself, more than a curate, for of his order he was a licentiate, his manner in the confessional. Full sweetly heard he confession, and pleasant was his absolution. He was an easy man to give penance, there as he wist to have a good pittance, for unto a poor order for to give is sign that a man is well Weisschreib, that is well shriven. For if he gave, he durst make a want. He wist that a man was repentant. For many a man so hard is of his heart, he may not weep though that he's sore smart. Therefore, instead of weeping and of prayers, men may give silver to the poor friars. In these lines, Geoffrey Chaucer is telling us that there was a friar. He was a gay and merry fellow. He was a limiter and a very festive person. In all the four orders of friar in England, at that time there was no one who was capable of indulging in so much gossip or of using so much flattering language. He had performed a large number of marriages of young women at his own cost. He was a noble pillar of his order. He was familiar to and well loved by rich farmers all over his country and also by worthy women of the town, for he was authorized by his order to hear confessions, as he himself said, more than a parish priest, because of the papal license which he held. Most sweetly did he heal a confession, and the absolution he granted was pleasant. He gave penance easily when he knew there he would get a remuneration, for he believed that to give money to a poor member of the order was a sign that the giver would be fully absolved of his sins. If a man gave enough charity, the friar could boldly assert that the giver was repentant of his sins, for many men are so hard-hearted that they cannot weep even though they may have suffered badly. Therefore, instead of giving ways to tears and offering prayers, men should give money to the friars. Lines 233 to 251. His tippet was a facade full of knives. Tippet means hood or crawl, and pines for to given fair wives, and certainly he had a merry note. Well could he sing and play on a rote. Rote is a stringed instrument resembling a, ale of weddings he bore utterly the prize. His neck was white as in the fleur de lilies as lily. Therefore he strong was as a champion. He knew the taverns well in every town and every hosteler, and tapester is a barmaid, but then a lazer or a begester. Lazer any poor or person, for unto such a worthy man as he accorded not as by his faculty, considering his possession or profession, to have with sick lasers acquaintance, it is not honest, it may not advance for to deal with no such quarrel, but all with the rich and sellers of retail, and over all there as profit should arise. Courteous he was and lowly of service. Lowly is humble in offering his service. His begging manner was so smooth or he could, if necessary, extract money from the poorest. There was no man nowhere so virtuous as, of such wonderful powers. He was the best beggar in his house. His hood was always stuffed with knives and pins to give to fair women, and certainly he had a merry voice. He could sing well and play on a fiddle. In singing, he easily took the prize. His neck was white as the lily, yet he was as strong as a champion. He knew the taverns well in every town, and he knew every innkeeper and barmaid better than he knew a leper or female beggar. It was not fitting in view of his position that a worthy man like him should become acquainted with sick lepers. It is not worthy and it brings no profit to deal with such poor people. It is much better to deal with the rich people and with the sellers of food. He was courteous and humble in rendering service wherever there was a possibility of making any money. There was no man anywhere so virtuous or having such a wonderful past. 252 to 269, and gave a certain farm for grant. None of his brethren came there in his haunt, for though a widow had not a shoe, so pleasant with his in principio means in the beginning, yet he would have a farthing ere he went. His purchase was well better than his rent, that is, the proceedings of his beggings were greater than his income, greater than the rent he paid to his convent. And rate he could, as it were, write a whelp. In love days there could he much ill help, for there he was not like a cloister with a threadbare cope, as in a poor scholar, but he was like a master of, or a pope of double worsted was his semi-cope, and rounded as a bell out of the press. Somewhat he lisped for his Pantanus to make his English sweet upon his tongue, and in his harping, when he had sung, his eye twinkled and his head aright, as so does the stars in the frosty night. This worthy limiter was Clep Hubbard. He was the most successful beggar of his order because his reading of the opening vessel of the Gospel of St. John was so pleasant that before leaving the house of a widow after a visit, he managed to extract from her some little money, even if she was exceedingly poor. The proceeds of his begging were much larger than the rent that he paid to his convent, and he could make a lot of noise as if he were a puppy on days fixed for the settlement of disputes by arbitration out of the court. He was very helpful because he was not a poor brother who remained in the cloister with a worn out short cloak on his body as a poor scholar would do that. He was like a high official who was brought influence to bear or juries, or an umpire who himself settled the disputes. His half cloak was made of double waisted, which, when taken out of the cloth's press and put on by him, immediately became as hound as a bell. He lisped a little just to produce a favorable impression or to make his words sound sweet like those of a child as he spoke them, and in the course of his playing on a harp when he had sung a song, his eyes twinkled in his head in the same way as do stars in the frosty night. This worthy limiter was called Herbert. थैंक यू। आई होप आज की वीडियो आपको पसंद है। कैसी लगी हमें कमेंट करके बताओ, और अगर आपके कोई सजेशंस है तो वो भी आप हमें कमेंट सेक्शन में बता सकते हैं। अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माय चैनल। मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। टिल देन कीप वॉचिंग एंड कीप सपोर्टिंग द सोलफुल डायरी। थैंक यू।